Picture this. A launch date has already been promised. The product is close, but manufacturing says it's not ready. Sales wants to keep the commitment. Operations wants more time. The founders don't want to compromise the thing that makes the product distinctive. Everyone in the room owns a legitimate part of the decision. Everyone may even be right about their part. And still, nobody in the room can decide what the company is willing to sacrifice. So the decision travels upward. But upward to whom? That sounds like a question the org chart should answer. And sometimes it does. Sometimes the chart tells us who owns product, operations, and commercial, yet leaves no one able to own the collision between them. I'm not describing something I know happened inside either of the companies in today's case. Public announcements can't show us that. But it is the kind of decision I couldn't stop thinking about when I put two recent leadership announcements beside each other. On Holding moved towards co-CEOs. SoftwareOne moved away from them. At first glance, those look like competing answers to the same question. The more closely I looked, the more I realized the companies were answering different questions. And that changed the question for me too. Welcome back to the Hidden Drag Brief. My name is Wojnowski. This is the first special edition built around one of my decision system case files. I created the case files because I wanted real company decisions to test my thinking, not simply illustrate conclusions I had already reached. The discipline is straightforward. Start with what the company actually said, separate that from my interpretation, stay honest about what we cannot see from outside, then ask what the decision might help us notice in our own organizations. After more than 40 years inside operating roles, integrations, transformations, and executive teams, I've learned that the boxes on an org chart usually explain less than we wish they did. The interesting part is the judgment moving underneath them. Why capable people reach different conclusions. Why a structure that serves one phase becomes less useful in another. And why two choices that appear to contradict each other can both make sense once we understand the jobs they were meant to do. That's what happened when I looked at On and SoftwareOne. Let me show you. On is the Swiss performance sportswear company behind the Cloud running shoes. Founded in 2010, it has grown into a global footwear, apparel, and accessories business. Its 25 net sales passed 3 billion Swiss francs. In March 2026, On announced that two of its co-founders, David Alman and Casper Capetti, I hope I got the pronunciation right there, would become co-CEOs. They would also remain executive co-chairman of the board. Scott McGuire would become president and COO, with responsibility across the full value chain from research and manufacturing through marketing, commercial operations, and technology. If you only scan the titles, the top of the company can look crowded, but the titles were not the part that I kept returning to. On said the new structure was designed to connect founder-led strategic intent with execution, preserve entrepreneurial speed, and bring founder stewardship into direct alignment with the work of running the company. 1 year earlier, On had moved from co-CEOs to Martin Hoffman as sole CEO. Now it was changing again, bringing two founders into the co-CEO roles and placing a president and COO across the operating core. The easy story would be that On could not make up its mind about how it wanted to be led. I don't think the public evidence gives us enough to tell that story. What I saw instead was a company moving judgment around as its needs changed. The 2026 design appears to bring founder judgment closer to the top operating role while giving one executive a broad view across the value chain. That made me wonder what kinds of decisions this structure was preparing the company to make. How do you keep the judgment that made a founder-led company distinctive without making every important operating choice travel back through the founders? How do you protect a product promise while scaling the machinery required to deliver it? And when those priorities genuinely conflict, Where can the whole trade-off close? On's announcement tells us what the company wants the structure to accomplish. It doesn't tell us how authority actually works when the choices become difficult. That distinction matters. A public announcement can describe the boxes. It can't show us the private conversation when product ambition, manufacturing readiness, margin, and a commitment already made to the market all meet in one decision. The company may have answered that authority question very well. I can't know that from outside. But the decision makes the question visible. When several leaders hold legitimate parts of the judgment, who can make the whole trade-off? Now, put that beside SoftwareOne. SoftwareOne is also headquartered in Switzerland, but it operates in a very different world. It helps organizations buy, manage, optimize, and modernize software and cloud technology. In July of 2025, it combined with the Norwegian company Crayon. The enlarged business had about 13,000 people across more than 70 countries. Raphael Erb and Melissa Mulholland became co-CEOs. Their responsibilities were divided. Erb looked after commercial operations, services, and the marketplace. Mulholland handled strategy development, customer platforms, and global functions, among other areas. You can understand why shared leadership might be useful during an integration of that scale. Two global businesses were bringing together the leadership teams, customer relationships, operating models, systems, legal entities, and regional organizations. Continuity from both sides could matter while a new company was being assembled. Then, in July of 2026, SoftwareOne said the integration was substantially complete and named Erb sole CEO for the next phase. This is where the comparison changed for me. SoftwareOne said its co-CEO model had been designed to ensure continuity through the integration. With that mandate nearing completion, the company said a sole CEO structure was the right next step, designed for a mandate, changed when the mandate changed. The structure had something close to an expiry condition. I can't tell from outside how well the co-CEO period worked. I can't tell whether moving to one CEO will improve the next phase, and I can't see how knowledge, relationships, and informal authority will transfer from two roles into one. What I can see is the logic the company chose to make public. Shared leadership was not presented as a permanent belief about how every company should be led. It was an answer to a particular phase. At this point, the whole case turned around for me. I thought I was looking at two answers to one question. Is one CEO better than two? Instead, each company appeared to be answering a different question about the work directly ahead of it. The conclusion I came away with was this. A leadership structure is a working hypothesis about where judgment needs to sit right now. On's apparent hypothesis places founder judgment close to an integrated operating core. SoftwareOne's integration hypothesis placed shared leadership around the work of becoming one company, then moved towards a sole CEO for the phase that followed. Neither choice proves that centralized authority is better than distributed authority. Neither tells us whether co-CEOs work as a general rule. The more useful question is whether the structure puts enough judgment and authority around the decisions the company now has to make. Organizations often forget that their structures began as answers to something. An integration needed continuity from both sides. Founder judgment needed to sit closer to execution. A new phase needed more focus. One executive needed a view across the operating system. Then the answer becomes familiar. The boxes become part of the furniture. The original question fades from memory. The job can change while the chart stays where it is. That doesn't mean reorganizing every time a difficult quarter arrives. It means being able to say what the current structure is meant to accomplish and what evidence would tell us that the job has changed. Once I saw the structure as a working hypothesis, another question followed. What exactly has to be complete for a consequential decision to move? The phrase that I've been using is quote, the smallest complete authority, unquote. By smallest, I don't mean the lowest person on the chart or the fewest people possible or one person making every important decision. I mean the smallest individual or group with enough judgment and authority to weigh the whole choice and let the decision move. Sometimes that is one executive. Sometimes it is a founder and operator making a defined call together. Sometimes it's an operator who can decide inside a clear boundary and know exactly what condition sends the call somewhere else. Now, come back to the launch I asked you to picture at the beginning. Sales owns the customer commitment. Operations owns reliable delivery. Product or the founders own the promise the company is making to the market. Every box has an owner. The trade-off between them does not, so the decision travels. It gets translated, checked, softened, or routed upward. A recommendation becomes a list of options. Another meeting appears. In the meantime, the team keeps two versions of the plan alive because nobody knows which one will survive. The delay doesn't leave the decision untouched. Sales keeps talking to the customer. Operations keeps allocating capacity. Product keeps building toward the original promise. By the time the decision finally reaches someone who can close it, commitments and sunk costs have made the trade-off harder. No one has to be careless for this to happen. Each person may be acting responsibly inside the authority they believe that they have. The design is simply incomplete at the collision point. And not every upward move is a failure. Some decisions should travel because the risk, cost, or change to the company's promise crosses a legitimate boundary. The problem is not escalation. The problem is an escalation path nobody can explain until the pressure arrives. A useful authority design names that boundary before the decision. Perhaps the operator can delay inside a defined window. Perhaps a change to the customer promise returns to the founder. Perhaps the launch date holds unless readiness crosses a specified threshold. The exact rule will differ. What matters is that people carrying the decision know where their authority ends and what properly happens next. For a few days, I thought the smallest complete authority was the conclusion of the case. Then, the discussion under my LinkedIn post on Wednesday exposed what it still missed. One person asked a very simple question. Who challenges the assumptions? That question moved me one step further. The smallest complete authority tells us who can make the whole trade-off. It doesn't tell us whether the case arriving in front of that person is any good. The person with enough authority to make the whole trade-off can still hear a beautifully prepared, internally consistent, one-sided case. An assumption may go unchallenged. A perspective that could change the call may be absent. The person who will carry the consequences may have no path into the reasoning. Complete authority doesn't guarantee sound judgment. That doesn't mean everyone affected gets a veto. Good deliberation is not the same thing as consensus. It means the strongest credible disagreement needs to become visible before the person with authority chooses. Not every opinion, the few disagreements that could actually change the call. That distinction has changed how I think about my own work. For months, I've been studying the second of the three jobs a decision system needs to do. Before the call, it has to improve the judgment, it has to expose the assumptions, bring the relevant perspectives into the reasoning, and test the strongest alternative. At the point of decision, it has to create clean closure. The complete trade-off needs somewhere to land, and the people expected to act need to understand what has been chosen. After the outcome, it has to support honest learning. What did we expect? What actually happened? Were we wrong, or did a sound decision produce a bad result? Did we make a weak decision and get lucky? Decision velocity still matters inside that larger system. A decision that never closes still creates real drag. But a bad decision can close beautifully. One owner, clear authority, explicit trade-offs, flawless execution. and still be the wrong call. That's where these two companies ultimately left me. I began with a question about the number of CEOs. I came away with 3 different questions. What job is the structure meant to do? Where can the complete trade-off close? And who is responsible for making the strongest case that the preferred decision may be wrong? I can't use the public evidence to diagnose either company. The announcements don't show informal authority, working relationships, private disagreement, actual decision paths, or whether the structures are producing what the companies hoped that they would produce. I can't tell you whether ON's new structure will create the agility it wants. I can't tell you whether SoftwareOne got what it needed from the co-CEO period, or whether one CEO will make its next phase easier. The comparison can't answer those questions. What it can do is give us a better place to start in our own organizations. If you're listening with one of your own decisions in mind, don't begin by redrawing the whole org chart. Choose one consequential decision that keeps moving sideways or upward, and follow it. What job is the current structure meant to do? Who holds the legitimate pieces of judgment? Who can make the whole trade-off? Who is responsible for presenting the strongest credible case against the preferred choice? And what evidence would cause you to revisit either the decision or the structure around it? Those questions won't guarantee that you're right. They will give the decision a clearer path from deliberation to closure to learning. That's also where I'm taking this inquiry next. I'm going to return to the case file using an experimental deliberation process that I call counsel. 5 deliberately different reasoning lenses will examine the same evidence independently. Their job will not be to produce 5 opinions. The chair's job will be to find the new disagreements that could change the recommendation and make the reasoning answer them. I don't yet know whether counsel will change the conclusion that I reached here. I want to be open to both possibilities. If it doesn't, I want to understand why the conclusion survived. If it does, that may be even more useful. Either way, that's the point of the experiment. The complete written lab case file includes the primary company sources, the fuller comparison, my interpretation, and what we simply can't know from outside. You'll find it linked in the show notes. I'll also link to a short video called Who Owns the Collision, if you'd like to see the authority problem drawn out visually. And if a recurring decision came to mind while you're listening, I would genuinely like to hear about it. Where does it keep traveling? Who owns the pieces? And who, if anyone, can make the whole trade-off? That's it for now. My name is Wojnowski. Thanks for listening, and I'll see you next time.